guys, so today I'm here to do my top 10 books of 2018. I wanted to upload this way earlier but I couldn't, and I don't know if you can hear but my voice is kind of getting lost. I think. I feel like I can't speak right now, but hopefully this video will work. So yeah, I wanted to get this up earlier but I couldn't, so here it is. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are excited too. So I'm going to talk about the top 10 best books that I read in 2018, and this was so hard to do. Like, it was so hard for me to compile this list because I read 108 books in 2018, so it was difficult. But I think I've got my ordering down. You know, maybe it's anyway. It was really hard, but yeah, I think I've got my list down, and all of these books weren't published in 2018. These are all just books that I read for the first time in 2018, so yes. You can place your bets below and guess what my #1 book of the year is, but I'm sure a lot of you already know it, so so I'm not going to include rereads. I'm also not going to be including manga / graphic novels / comics because I'm going to do a separate video for that, so that should be coming soon. And also I made a rule that I can't show multiple books in the same series. I will only choose one book from that series, my favourite book from that series. Hopefully that makes sense. So yes, let's just get into it. But first, I do have a few honourable mentions because I just had to quickly mention these books because they were just so close to making the list and I just didn't, so yeah. So I have 2 honourable mentions, and the first one is Vicious by V.E. Schwab, and this is amazing. I'll link a video up here where I talk about it because I love it. It was so addicting and it was definitely a standout read in 2018, but it just didn't quite make the list, although this is actually one of my favourite books of all time. But I feel like all of the books on my top 10 list are now like all-time favourites. But yeah, so I really love this a lot. It has morally grey characters, it's all about villains, it's all about what makes someone evil. So yeah, it's super good. Had to mention it. Love this. And the next honourable mention is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. This is an Asian-inspired fantasy novel and I adored it. It was my first Asian-inspired fantasy that I read, and it has a female-female romance. I love the writing. I loved this world. It was so interesting and complex. But yeah, I really adored this, and this didn't quite make the list, but I really wanted to mention it. So yes. Now getting into the top 10. Okay, so coming in at number 10, we have The Female of the Species by Mindy McGuinness, and this was one of the most impactful reads I've ever read. It's basically a YA contemporary that examines rape culture, and this does get compared to Dexter because our main character Alex, she does not hesitate to kill people who have committed sex crimes and have gotten away with it, so it is similar in that sense, but I feel like that's not the main plot. That definitely is an element, but it mostly, yeah, just examines rape culture, and we have a few different perspectives and we have some really great characters. I really loved the main character Alex. She stands up for herself and what she believes in, and it was just so amazing to read about, and there were just so many amazing quotes, and this is just so feminist. And this book did break me a bit because I experienced so many emotions while reading this book. It's definitely quite a heavy book, and I did cry in this book, which is a rare occurrence for Chloe. For me, I don't know why I said for Chloe. Oh my gosh. It is a rare occurrence for me to cry in books, so that just really shows how invested I was in this story and with these characters. It does have a few trigger warnings, so there are definitely trigger warnings for sexual assaults, violence, and animal abuse. This book also really tackles girl hate, which I absolutely loved. And yeah, it just tackles so many important themes. It really just shows the prevalence of rape culture in our society, and I loved it a lot. I loved it so much. It's an absolute favourite, so this had to be in my top 10 list, and it's everything. The next book we have is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and this was incredible. This is basically the first book in a new fantasy series, and we have a full cast of POC, which is amazing. And this book basically follows Zelly and a few other characters trying to bring magic back to their land because it has been taken from them by the Saki King. So they go on a little adventure trying to bring back magic to the land and fight against the oppressive king, and it's just so incredible. I love what it says on the back. This really just captures the story. They killed my mother, they took our magic, they tried to bury us, now we rise. This was just so engrossing. It did take me a bit, maybe like 100 pages to fully get into it, but once you're in it, you're in it. And you just go on a wild ride with these characters. I love the characters so much. We have some really great friendships that are formed and a little bit of a romance, which I don't know how I feel about the romance. I don't mind it, but I also don't 100% love it. But because it's sort of similar to Zutara, I'm like sort of there for it. But I know that a lot of people don't like the romance, and I can totally see why. Zelly is such a powerful main character. I loved her so much. She is really blunt. She just says what's on her mind. And we also have Amari, who is the princess, and she runs away from the kingdom, and they meet up and they have such a like hate to love friendship. I love it. It's so amazing. And the way that magic works in this world is so fascinating. I love it so much. It's very much inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is like my favorite show, so of course I'm gonna love it. And it was just so fascinating to read about, and just this whole world is so rich in history. It's very much inspired by West African culture, so yes, it was amazing. And some people say that it's sort of tropey, and yeah, like, it is a bit tropey. I don't really mind if a book is tropey if it's done really well, and this was done really well. There was just so much that I loved about it. I can't wait for the sequel. This was just incredible, and by the end of it I literally had to stand up and read because I was so stressed, so I was like pacing around like so yeah, I was so invested in this. I know that a lot of people love it, some people hate it, but I love it. This comes in at number 9. The next book that I have is The Astonishing Colour of After by Emily X. Pan, and this was absolutely incredible. I feel like I'm just gonna say that about all of these books. Obviously all of these books are incredible, but this one, this is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read, despite it dealing with a very dark topic, and that is the topic of suicide, because we basically follow a main character, Lay, and Lay's mother has recently died by suicide, and so Lay believes that her mother has turned into a bird, so she tries to follow her bird, the mother, and then she ends up meeting with her mother's family in Taiwan because she is half Taiwanese, and I just adored this. It was so beautiful. Emily X. Pan's writing is incredible. This is her debut novel. I cannot wait to read any of her other books that she comes out with because her writing is just one of my favorite writing styles. It's just really beautiful, lyrical, and this is a magical realism, so it really just suits the vibe of the story, and the way that mental health was explored in this book was done really well. While of course it is very sad, it definitely leaves you hopeful. It's a really emotional read, but I really connected to this story in so many different ways, and there's also a really cute little romance in this book which I really loved. It means a lot to me, and it's just so, it's so good. I just love it with all my heart. I definitely feel like my voice isn't working, but we're gonna keep going. So the next book is actually this whole series, but I'm choosing one book of that series, and that is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. So this is part of the Shades of Magic series, and this is the final book in the trilogy, and this is my favorite book in the trilogy. Oh my gosh, this was so freaking fantastic. I'm trying to think of synonyms so I don't keep saying the same thing over and over, but this was so good. This whole series came into my life this year, and it was such a fun time because I was actually a co-host for the Dark Shade of Read-alongs, which was hosted by Common Spence. So I had such a fun time reading this series this year and discussing it with everyone in the monthly live shows. Those are some of my favourite booktube memories, so I have that extra connection to this series and this book, so I just love it so much. If you didn't know, in this series we basically have 4 parallel Londons. So we have Black London, White London, Red London and White London, and all have different levels of magic, and Black London is actually basically non-existent because magic has consumed it completely. The world is so fascinating to read about, and the way that magic works is just so unique. It definitely has Avatar The Last Airbender / Fullmetal Alchemist vibes. Not completely, but there's definitely inspiration that you can see in the series from those 2 series. So yeah, I loved it, and the characters, I loved the characters so much. Some of my favourite characters are in this series, and there are some really cute romances and a lot of LGBT+ characters and POC, like it's not just a white fantasy. And the villain in this was super interesting. I really loved the fight scenes. It was just so captivating, like so much goes on, and it was super atmospheric. And this is actually an adult fantasy series, but it's very accessible in my opinion because V. Schwab has very simple writing, so everything's explained really well. So yeah, I loved this, and I'm so excited for the next follow-up trilogy to this. I'm so happy that I read it, and it's a new fave. So coming in at number 6 we have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and in my mid-year book freakout tag this was actually at number 1. Well, it was tied with another book at number 1. It's made its way down to 6, but I still loved it. This book is just, it's not for everyone, but I adored it. So basically this is a YA fantasy and has fairies, but it's not your typical fairies that you read in a lot of other books. The fairies in this world are definitely cruel, are like bullies, and they're not nice. So I personally found that super interesting to read about because a lot of the time fairies are romanticized, but in this book they're all like really cutthroat, not nice people. So I found that super interesting because I really like dark books. This definitely has a lot of violence, so there are definitely trigger warnings for violence and bullying. But yeah, so if you didn't know, we basically followed Jude, and when Jude was younger she watches her parents get murdered right before her eyes, and she's kidnapped with her sisters and they are whisked away to the land of Fae. And the fairies definitely look at her as lesser because she is human, so she wants more than anything to prove to them that she is worthy to live in this land and be one of them, sort of. So it's really interesting. Jude is definitely a character I don't like, but she's very interesting to read about. This is actually a really interesting book for me because a lot of the time I need to love the characters to really love a book, but I don't really like any of these characters, but I enjoy reading about them because they're just so different and definitely morally grey, and some of them just straight up bullies like Carden. I don't love him like a lot of other people do, and I don't really love the romance, but it's it's interesting to read about because it's like, okay, you two both suck, but I guess you kind of work together. They do have some redeeming qualities maybe, but overall I wouldn't say they're very good people. But yeah, like I said, it was just so fascinating, and there's so much political intrigue, and I loved the world. I just love descriptions of really magical worlds, and I have so many little illustrations of all the different descriptions of the worlds. Like, that's just a little simple example, but I just loved being in this world, even though I wouldn't actually want to live there. I like sort of do, just because it sounds so beautiful, but I wouldn't want to hang out with those people. And this reading experience was so memorable because I was just so like, there's just so much going on and so much backstabbing. It is just so intense, and I think I have had people say it's slow at the beginning. I didn't really notice that because I was so captured in like the descriptions of the world and stuff, but I think, yeah, it probably is a bit slow in the beginning, but then it just gets so intense and you can't put the book down because a lot happens. Yeah, I loved this. I loved this so much, so this had to be on my list, and I can't wait for The Wicked King, which should have already arrived, but it hasn't, and I'm waiting for it to come. But yeah, so it's definitely not for everyone. But if you're into dark stories and a lot of political intrigue and morally grey characters, then I'd recommend it. So coming in at number 5 is SimonDresses: A Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I read this for the first time this year. It feels like I've had this in my life for so long. This is obviously a very popular book, but if you didn't know, we basically follow Simon. I was gonna say Simon Snow. No, that's in a different book. Simon Spear, and he is a closeted gay teen, and he starts emailing with another closeted gay teen at the school, so they don't know each other's identity, and one person finds these emails between them and uses those emails to blackmail Simon. And that doesn't sound like a very fun and happy book, but it is. This is one of the books that make me the happiest because it's just so cute, and it really just captures the teenage experience, in my opinion. It makes me feel like I'm a teenager again, hanging out with these characters, part of their friend group, and it's just so fun. I love Simon so much. He's a Hufflepuff and he's amazing. He's one of my favorite characters, and the relationship in this book is so cute. And yeah, it's just one of the cutest books ever. I loved it so much, and it just gives me so much happiness. So I actually read this twice within the span of like a month, because I read it once, I listened to this on audiobook, which by the way, the audiobook is amazing. And then like 2 weeks later, I was like, I need to read it again. So I listened to it again on audiobook. That's how happy this book made me. And while it's very happy and fluffy and fun, it also does deal with a lot of important topics. So I really appreciate it for that. It's so good. I love it. Okay, so coming in at number 4, we have Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. And actually the whole Infernal Devices series is on my list, but this is my favourite out of the series. This series is so good. Some of my absolute favourite characters are in this series. I love Jem, Will and Tessa so much. And I loved the Victorian London setting. It's just such an amazing blend of historical fiction and fantasy, and I loved how it's set in London. I love London. Well, I love reading about London. I haven't been to London, but the relationships are definitely the highlight of this series. The characters just care for each other so much, and it just makes my heart ache. And I was so stressed reading this book, which might sound like a bad thing, but I love when I get stressed reading because that means that I'm invested and I'm caring about what's happening. And I remember just lying on the floor reading the last bit of this book, just like crying. I have such a strong attachment to this book, and this was the first Cassandra Clare book that I was like, whoa, I get it. The other books that I'd read, I was just like, oh yeah, this is fun. But this was the first book where I was like, she's amazing. Yeah, I just love this so much. It's just incredible. These characters and the relationships and everything. There's also a lot of humour, so there are a lot of really funny moments. Never trust a duck. That's all I can say. Okay, so now we're up to the top 3 of the books, and I actually have some medals prepared. So the books are going to be getting some medals. So the book that gets the bronze medal, so my 3rd favourite book of 2018, goes to a book that completely transported me into the world. Yes, it is another fantasy, and it was the first book that I read from this author, and it's my favourite of her books that I've read so far. And that is The Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. Congratulations. Do you have anything to say? So I read this during booktubeathon, so I read this relatively quickly within 2 days I think, and I'm so glad I have that footage on camera because I fell in love with this book so quickly. It is such a fascinating read and I love these characters. So this is the first book in the Monsters of Verity duology, and I haven't read the second one. Oh no, anyway. And in the city of Verity, violence breeds actual monsters. So we follow 2 characters. We follow Kate, who is a human and wants to be as ruthless as her father, who rules half of the city. And we also follow August, who is a monster, and he wants more than anything than to be human. He has a lot of self-doubt and self-loathing, and August is like, I connect to him so much, and he's a Ravenclaw and he plays the violin. He loves reading. He is one of my favourite characters ever. He's such a pure cinnamon roll, and the fact that he's a monster but he doesn't want to be, it's just breaks my heart. And it really just poses the question, what makes someone human? And just the whole plot is so interesting. Just the fact that violence breeds monsters, it's just I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. And yeah, like I said, this was my first Victoria Shop book and I just completely fell in love. And I always think about this book when I was creating my top 10 books of the year. This was one of my first books that came to my mind. This has just stood out since I read it in July, I think. It's probably going to stick with me forever because I relate to it on so many levels. I just relate to the character of August so much. I just have a really personal connection to this book. It's hard for me to explain sometimes, but I just love it so much. And it definitely deserves the bronze medal. So the silver medal goes to a book that maybe some of you didn't realise that I only read this year because I talk about it kind of often and it's one of my favourite books ever. I read it before I started my booktube channel this year, so maybe you haven't really heard my thoughts properly on this book, but that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. Congratulations. Obviously this is a hugely popular book. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I was gonna like it, but I wasn't really sure because it's like adult historical fiction. Actually, is it adult? I've actually looked that up online and some people say it's young adult because we do follow a younger character, but anyway. And I read this at the beginning of the year and it was truly life-changing. I was so immersed in the story and it's definitely a slower book, I would say, but it's just an experience. It really just makes you think and be grateful and will definitely make your heart break. The characters in this book and the relationships that are built are so heartwarming. This story takes place in Nazi Germany and it is told from the perspective of death, so that in itself is so interesting. Getting Death's perspective is such a unique reading experience. And we follow a young girl called Liesel who experiences a lot of loss at a young age and starts stealing books and quickly falls in love with words and reading. She's also taken in by a foster family and that foster family starts hiding a Jew in their basement, which puts that whole family at a lot of risk. So all of this that's going on and the setting and everything definitely makes this a really heartbreaking read, but it was so well done and I love how it showed the power of words and how much of an impact that can have on people's lives. And Marcus Zuzak has a really unique writing style and it did take me a bit of time to get into, but I really ended up enjoying it. And there are a few illustrations throughout which I really adored, and like I said, the relationships that I built are just so pure. And I did also watch the movie adaptation after reading this and I loved the movie adaptation. So yeah, if you're a book lover, I think you're going to love this as well because it really does, like I said, show the power of reading. And I know this isn't for everyone, it is a slower paced book and the writing style is pretty unique, but I just, like I said, loved it and it will forever hold a special place in my heart. Now, coming in at number 1, I'm sure you all know what this book is. My favourite read of the year, because it's basically now my favourite book of all time and I haven't shut up about it, but my favourite book of 2018, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Who's shocked? No one. I can't believe I've only known this book for quite a short period of time. This was the most unique reading experience I've ever had, I think. No, I know, yes, I know it. This was the most unique reading experience I've ever had. I was just completely captured by like page 30. Well, I was captured by page 1, but then I needed to like know what was going on. But by page 30, that's when it was solidified because I feel like I've said this so many times, but this quote just solidified it for me. Oh yes, on page 25. It was impossible, of course, but when did that ever stop any dreamer from dreaming? I can't explain the physical reaction I had when reading that. My heart was like, oh my gosh, like I love this book. I just felt like I was living in a different dimension and I was just having the most magical reading experience. That's how I felt reading this whole book. It was just so magical, and Laini Taylor's writing is my favourite writing style of all time. It's like, it's magic and that's the only way I can describe it. It's sorcery. Like, how is that even possible to write this amazingly? Her writing is so beautiful and lyrical, and I know it's not for everyone, but if you're into that kind of writing, you will adore this book because it is so lush and her descriptions are amazing and immersive. It's just incredible, and some of my absolute favourite characters are in this series, and one of my favourite romances ever is in this series, and I know some people think it's insta-love, I personally don't. I'm going to link my September wrap-up where I talk about this book for like 7 minutes if you want to hear more of my thoughts, and I'm also going to link a live show that I was a part of where we really dive into this duology because this is a duology. I also did read Muse of Nightmares, which is the sequel this year, well in 2018. Loved that so much as well, but I do love Strange a little bit more. This is just so incredible. I just love the themes that it explores and how it shows that there's not one true villain, although I do love the main villain in this series. They are so fascinating and one of my favourite villains that I've ever read. It does really show that there's not always one right side. Everyone has their own different experiences and perspectives and ways of thinking and why they think they're doing the right thing. It's really thought-provoking and amazing, and the plot is just so intricate. The world building is amazing. Everything about this is incredible. So I've talked about this so much in 2018, but yeah, I mean, this is my favourite book, so it of course had to get the gold medal. No book is more deserving. This book is honestly like so superior to all the other books in my mind. It is just on a whole new level. Like, I'm just in awe of it. I love it so much. So, number 1 book of the year. Okay, so my throat really hurts and I've been talking for a long time, but I hope you guys enjoyed and I would love to hear your thoughts and what your favourite books of the year were. And yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are having a good day or night and I'll see you in my next one. Hey guys. Oh god. Hey guys, so today I'm nonsense. Hey guys. Oh god. Hey guys, so today I'm here. No, what is going on? Hey guys. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Hello. Hey guys, so today I'm here to do. Oh my gosh, my voice.